Oh, I wish I felt dangerous tonight, but I don't.
We're alive.
Well,
Well, could be
I
worse.
don't know. I got a good idea of what I want to do for a discussion on Saturday, but I don't know if I should do it or not.
Okay, what are you thinking about doing for Saturday?
Setting the record straight about the difference between newsstand and direct and why people should not be going goo goo gaga for newsstand editions like they are.
Okay, I, as someone who has only ever had newsstand or comic book shop editions, that's
Well,
all.
that's kind of like the scope of it here, because there was nothing but newsstand in the very beginning.
Yeah, I was about to say, and
It
then
wasn't until the late 70s that we started get the direct market, and
yeah,
those books were for like the late 70s, to
well,
like
actually, more
early
late
80s.
'60s, early '70s, because I
Yeah,
remember seeing um, ads for. But they also, I don't think you could just order any book. I think
but
there
that's
was only certain, when they first started, only certain books, like the more popular books,
mhm.
you could order, and then the more the other, there are other second string books you had to find elsewhere, and then eventually they started opening it so that if they had a book coming out, you could subscribe and order it. And I think um, you had to order individual books, or I think at one point you could subscribe, and you paid
It was
some.
subscriptions for
Yeah, and
so many issues for I think like $5-6 back then.
yeah, because for those of you who aren't aware, comic books were like 25 cents when I was a kid, and you got more pages.
But the whole fact of the matter is that newsstand was the de facto standard. But yet collectors nowadays are making it seem like, oh, I have to get the newsstand version because it's worth more. It's like not
No,
necessarily.
not
The
necessarily.
rarer newsstand books doesn't come into the late 80s, early 90s, when they completely stopped doing newsstand editions. Those are only the rare newsstand editions of the books. The further you go back, the roles actually reverse. That the direct market was more the rarer copy than
Yeah,
newsstand, because newsstand was the de facto standard. And I'm just listening to all of these different podcasts that deals with comic book investment. So that's why I'm
oh,
up here.
okay. See, that's
It's like maybe I should set the record straight here. It's like, if you really going to go out there, if you really want to follow the advice about newsstands and newsstands editions and all this other stuff, know what genre and year of the book that you're really looking for the newsstand version of.
yeah. I was about to say, because, like I said, back in the day, some newsstand editions were hard because not every newsstand carried comics.
Hmm.
And when newsstands did carry comics, it was, what were the big titles? You could find Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman just about anywhere. You could find Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, Captain America, and Iron Man. If but it not all newsstands carried comics. Depending on where they were located, they just didn't want kids. And some places they weren't allowed to sell. Kids couldn't buy comics. They wouldn't carry comics because some newsstands sold tobacco.
Hmm.
One of my favorite newsstands was in the Monadnock building, and it was a tobacco shop that was open, that the main wall, they pulled it open, and the guy would set out his newsstand. So you'd have the tobacco shop, there was the newsstand, and the guy that did shoe shines. Because this was at a time, believe it or not, People wore a lot of leather shoes. And downtown, it was not unheard of to find a shoe shine dude at about every major high rise building in the city. It was if you stuffed up your shoe and you needed to get a quick shine, just about any building that had a lobby worth walking into um, had shoe shines. And that was even if you went towards what is now considered the West Loop. Those places, if they had office buildings, a lot of them had shoe shines, or you knew the buildings where the shoe shine was. In fact, there are a lot of places that actually there were a couple of shoe repair. I don't know if you remember.
Mhm.
There are a couple of places that had shoe repair. I'm trying to. I know one of the first National Plaza buildings, I think, had a shoe repair. There were a couple of buildings along State Street, one or two on Wabash, and then
Uh-oh. But now you make it. You see, all this talk making me think about one of our favorite newsstands that went away at went away towards the middle of the '90s.
Are we talking about
The one on Randolph,
by right
in
the
front of the in
the
front of Liz
library
House.
and the Millennium Station?
Hmm.
I loved I loved that newsstand because he had just about everything.
Hmm.
That a guy, and it was he for kids and teenagers that stand was kind of like oh shit hold on sorry got to turn the phone down. It was kind of like for what the adult equivalent of hanging out at your favorite bar was. Because you would always, sometimes depending on when you went, you bump into the same kids looking for the same books, you know. And they also had the guy who had there were two guys.
Hmm.
They and depending on the day of the week or time of day, one guy had Polishes and hot dogs.
Hmm.
And the other guy was a little tamale guy.
Across the street.
Yeah, he was over there in front of the building that the Swedish airline was at. I know that because my cousin Sonia used to work in that building. She actually worked for I forgot what they were called. It was like the leading airline, Swiss Air or something like that. But it was one of the leading airlines, and she worked as a travel agent for them. Back when airlines had their own travel agents, where you would, if you didn't want to deal with the travel agency, you could
Hmm.
just get in touch with an airline and say, "Hey, I'm planning this trip to go blah blah blah," and they go, "Really? We can get you on. Let's see what flights are there. Hey, do you need a hotel? We can, Airlines used to do that for people. The better airlines, United used to do that for a while. You didn't have to go through a separate travel agent. You could call United and book your flight. And they would go, "Hey, do you need a hotel? We actually know a couple of hotels that you could take." It was a one stop shop.
Hmm. Now it's not.
Now it's not. Then it became the airlines decided that was too much work. So then travel agents were sort of like, well, we can be the one stop shop for whatever you need, have a car pick you up. Because it used to be you go to O'Hare and say you got off the air, you had a first class trip, and you would either through the airline or travel agent, you get by the time you went and got your luggage and came out, your limo was waiting for you, or there were cabs.
Hmm.
There used to be just about every major cab company and a couple of independent limousines plus the shuttles. Because when my oldest was a baby, we came back here from California a couple of Christmases, and luckily you could get the shuttle from the, you get off the airport and and if you were going to, there were different shuttles depending on where you were going.
Mhm.
But at the very least, they would get you downtown. And some shuttles, depending depending on how many people they had, and you pay a few extra bucks, or if they didn't have a lot of people, they would take you almost to exactly where you were going and drop you off. It's like, thank you, Mr. Shuttle Person. But this was back in the day when people actually dressed up. Remember those? I don't know if you remember those days. How back in the day, people used to dress up to fly. People would get on the plane looking like they were going to a high-end cocktail party. I don't care if you were flying
Mhm.
first class or you were flying coach. You got just getting on the plane was an event, and you got dressed up for it. You did not nowadays. You know,
We're in what, barely in like yoga pants or something, and just whatever you got on, pajamas and everything. People getting on
it's like,
airplanes.
did you at least wipe your butt before you got on the plane? Ew. Like I said, it used to be you didn't walk in air to like an airport if you weren't, it was like airports themselves had dress codes, and if you were walking into some airport looking like toe up from the flow up,
Oh, they'd be ready to
everybody.
escort you right back out because they kind of figure you're not there. Because again, air travel was not cheap back then.
Well,
Not
even
not to the way it is now.
yeah, I mean, even cheapish air travel, it was considered somewhat special.
Hmm.
And if you walked yourself through an airport, like I said, looking toe up from the floor up, security would be on you. By the time you got about 20 feet in, somebody would come up and go, um, do you know where you are you supposed to be here? Have you, and they would ask you, are you getting on a plane? Are you meeting somebody who's coming in? They would be like all up in
Hmm.
you, it, it was just, you were like, okay, but then, yeah, traveling like that used to be special, though I loved, and I still do to a degree. It's not that I don't like flying, but I love train travel.
Train travel used to be the exact same way.
You didn't get you got on the train, and even if you were sitting up, in other words, you weren't in the you yourself didn't have like a little area. You were just had seats, and you
Right.
were coming overnight.
If you was
Um,
not in like a sleeping car or something to that magnitude, if you was if you didn't have like one of those books where you had a sleeping car and had access to a bed and stuff to that magnitude.
yeah, there were different. Yeah, because traveling was a little different. But this was also at a time when everybody dressed. You could get into the bar so long as you were old enough. Most trains had, you're not going to believe it, but most trains had a bar car. I mean, an actual
Well, yeah,
bar car.
that's what the dining car and stuff is now. It's like they combine everything, and then what the one thing that I don't, and this is not a knock at Amtrak because it's been a couple of years since I've been on an Amtrak train. They
Nowadays, if you're on an Amtrak, if you are not, if you're just riding, in other words, you're not, because they now break it down into, like say if you're traveling from here to
okay,
LA, that's a 20-hour, that's
right,
like 20, 22 hours. Now the cheapest seats, there are a couple of cars where you don't get to lay down. You're just sitting in theirs. For those people, you don't automatically get meals, but they do have a car that you can. I think there's a lower level of one of the cars where you go down and they've got the machine. So if you're
So
sitting there, you can get stuff from the machines. You pay for it. They're
they,
not giving
I
you.
think they kind of changed that because the the newer version of the dining car, there is a person that's an attendant that's there.
Well,
They don't have full-fledged meals in that particular car, but you could buy things like, the frozen White Castle hamburgers or whatever, burrito that they could heat up and hand to you for like $5 or $6 or something to that magnitude.
they also have. Now anybody can use the viewing card. That's the card that has the glass dome top, so that you can look up or you can look out. There's
That
usually one card.
that
Anybody.
depends on your ticket. That really depends more on your ticket because when I used to travel from here to Springfield on a consistent basis,
Hmm.
I used to catch the train that was going from Chicago to LA because it would go from Chicago, hits all these little bitty stops, to hits St. Louis, then hits a couple others. And I always travel like government business class. So, pretty much just like because it's only like a 4 hour ride, is just pretty much, you know, they don't give you any of the meal vouchers or anything to that magnitude. It's just pretty much you got a seat and you go for what you know here.
That anybody can sit in the viewing car. They may have one or more viewing cars. Anybody can sit in that car. Um, they've got little table areas, and every of these little table areas has a place where you can plug your phone or whatever in
Mm-hmm.
and ride. Now they do have a more formal dining car,
And
and
exactly, of course.
that one you have to have either you have. I don't know if they still have the sleeping berths, but they have what it is, the sleeping compartments.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a sleeping compartments, you get meals as part of, because the sleeping compartment ones I think are 2,500 per person to about three something, 3 grand something per person, depending on the size of your compartment, and they go from 2 to 6 people. And the larger ones, if you've got four or more, they have bathrooms in the compartment. And then, but those cars also have, their section also has a bathroom area
Mm-hmm.
that they can use. And your section, you get an attendant. So you get on the train, you get in your ticket, the attendant meets you, make sure that you settle into your compartment. And then those sections, depending on the train, they actually have a section that has coffee, juice, stuff like that. And because you're on that particular car, that's free. There's water, there's coffee, juices, and whatnot. And your compartments, you've got a thing where you can plug your stuff in, and watch and everything.
Exactly. But
So
one of the things that I don't miss, but I thought it was kind of funny and ironic, the route that the Amtrak takes between here in Chicago and to like Springfield do cross over beyond a couple of prisons. And
oh no.
when people were getting out, that they finished serving their term and everything,
They
they
would get a
book
ticket.
them. It's like if worst comes to worst, they will book them an Amtrak ticket. They will give them 2 vouchers for 2 meals to get them to eat to whatever their destination, whether it be heading back up north to Joliet or Chicago or back out south. And it was just weird because coming, it's like I normally see it more so coming back to Chicago, that
Hmm.
people getting out of Dwight or Statesville and Joliet and stuff like that, they would have them, and the attendant would get them all squared away because they're not used to civilization.
Yeah.
And
Um,
the first place that after they got settled in, they would head to like that little bitty concession area and use that voucher to get some food and some alcohol or whatever drink that they want.
I think now. because they've been making changes on the train about access to, because the dining car, like I said, depending on how you're traveling, they have meal times, and you can book your meal time. And of course, the people who are in those travel compartments, they have top choice.
Hmm.
And then you have a menu that you can choose from.
And
I
that's
would
kind of weird because
I have always dreamed
mhm.
of, and it's still running, um, but it's not what it used to be. Ever since I saw the movie Murder on the Orient Express,
Mhm.
I wanted to travel on the Orient Express. And for those of you who are not aware, used to be a train called the Orient Express. You would get on it in Paris, and you would literally, it was called the Orient Express because you would ride it to, I think you would get off in Turkey. I think the
Mhm.
furthest it went was like Istanbul or something like that. And it would take you, what, it's depending on where you went, because you swung around Russia, parts of Russia, Siberia, and on.
See,
Um,
that's the thing that
this
always confused me because it was a one stretch that was a bridge, was a long bridge that allows you to cross. I forgot what body of water, and then it swings back around the land to get you around Russia and curves back around towards Africa. So it was like you were going through like the outskirts of Russia and Asia to get almost back around to
to Africa.
Africa.
Yeah. And I can't remember what that is. But this was also in the day of luxury train travel, you know, and when it depending
Again, had to
each
dress
car
up.
had one or two. Yeah, you had in fact the um Orient Express still runs. It runs about, I think, anywhere from half to about a third of what it used to go, because there are certain countries that it's just not safe to go to, um, at least not via train. But I know if you book um, first class, even no, if you I don't even think they have people who are like sitting up on that. It used to be, if you didn't have money, you there was an area where you could just have seats that you sat in, but they don't do that no more, not on that train. It's all luxury.
Hmm.
um because a couple of years ago I heard about it was what, right after they lifted travel restrictions following COVID, they did a run on the Orient Express, and it started in, was it not Paris, this place outside of Paris, and went where it's running, and it was like 20 grand, and I was like,
You going like inflation.
well, it's interesting because when I was a little girl, they a lot of the old movies made travel a lot more glorious. If you looked at travel back on movies and stuff then and the way travel is now, even Some Like It Hot, you know, they had they they had these sleeping quarters, and I just wonder if that's where they got those idea for the little hotel sleeping things in Japan, because
I don't know.
they're very like that, except in Japan they're totally enclosed, whereas the sleeping quarters on the train, um, they had curtains over your berth. They had the sleeping berths, there were curtains, but you didn't have a lot of privacy. But they would separate them. I think they had, like, for women, they had like cars that were women. If you weren't a couple or a
Hmm.
family, if you were a single woman or a single man traveling, because you did have a lot of female military personnel who were traveling. So you would have like sections of the train where it was just women. But you had these little, they were like little, they were shelves that they would put kind of a blanket on, they would put like kind of a mattress on, and they would close it, and you would take all your luggage, and I think a lot of people took their luggage and stuff in there. Um, and then the other people, that was the second lowest. I think the lowest was you sat in the chair for your trip. But also I think a lot of the people who ended up sitting were also going the shortest distances,
Hmm.
unless they had to go longer, and that was the best they could afford.
But like you said, it made it seem like it was glamorous because now, since I'm thinking
Oh,
about it, a lot of the older movies that dealt with cruise ships, especially things like, I hate to say the movie Titanic, but it's just like, yeah, it was even separated by classes.
yeah, the third class or steerage,
Hmm.
you know, were um, what they now refer to as the poop deck,
Hmm.
and then first and second class. You know, I think they now have four classes of steerage. It's all cabins, but I think back in the day, um, if you were traveling the bottom class, it was kind of like traveling on a train. You didn't have a cabin to yourself. You shared so many people to a cabin, and usually people who were emigrating to the states or whatnot, or had to travel because there was a job overseas, and they if they could get to this country, they could get a job.
Right.
So they would travel like that. So you would see like lots of you'd see young women or young men, in these very, crowding up in these very small cabin areas, so that they could get across, because that before they had passports and IDs. That's basically what a lot of people did. You could get on a boat and, excuse me, go across the ocean and have a better chance of getting a job. Sometimes it's interesting when you think about it. There was a time when people moved a little more freely about the planet. Not to say people aren't moving about the planet now, but it was a little, immigration was, you would get on the boat if you survived the trek to make it to Ellis Island,
Hmm.
unless you had something. And depending on where you were coming from, you were pretty much guaranteed an in, you know, unless you had some highly communicable disease, of which most people who did died on the trip because they weren't used to traveling like that. Um, but it was different than, because if you think about when the Irish came over after the famine, you know, it was a different thing. It was not, people came over, and a lot of people changed names.
Hmm.
Whoever they were back in the old country, they would get here, change their name. you know it was a different, world. It was a different, yeah. Believe it or not, you know sounds weird.
I wouldn't say sounds weird. It just made me think about how even in the movies, when they did the separation of classes, it's like each level, what each level celebrated in pretty much the same manner. It's like the upper crust had their more elegant dinners and societal events and everything, and like those that were in the lower decks, they actually had their own you know meals and dances and all the other stuff. So it's like, it wasn't like there was like, oh, because you got put in steerage, that you didn't have any fun on the boat.
No, and sometimes the people in steerage had more fun because life was a little freer
Hmm.
below deck. Whereas, when you were, if you think again about the way they portrayed life in Titanic, um, you know, the higher up the ladder you're going, the more rules and regulations that restrict, especially as a woman.
Hmm.
You know, you didn't travel if you were a certain age. You didn't travel alone. I just remember reading. I guess anybody who's ever read Little Women, Joe's dream was that she was going to travel with Aunt March. Aunt March was going to go to Europe because wealthy American women did. If you have the money, every few years or so, you would do, and upper middle class people in Europe did it. They would go, if you were English, you would take the tour. A lot of widows would take the tour, as they say it, but you would go to like Spain and Italy and France, Belgium, maybe Switzerland, and you would, there would be like this whole thing where you would go through these places and visit art museums and things like that. It was a very societal thing, but you were also, especially in what we call the Gilded Age, you as a woman, an older woman traveling alone, nobody had a problem with that. But as a younger woman, so if you wanted to do something like that, you had to be with an aunt or some female patron that would take you around. And then that was a way to get younger women introduced into, it's a way of introducing younger women into the society. Especially maybe you had an aunt with money. In the March's case, they didn't have money, but their aunt, well, they had some money, but our Aunt March had money. And so the whole point was Joe was expecting to go with her because she wanted to go to Europe. She wanted to be a writer. She had all these plans. And then she didn't take her. She took Amy instead of her, um, which was like a serious letdown for her. But for a lot of young women to get out and see the world, that's how you did it. But even then, when doing that, there were codes of behavior, you know. And so you couldn't just run off to see, if you met some young gentleman, And also, after studying, because I used to love the Algonquin Roundtable.
Hmm.
Dorothy Parker, those writers of that
Yeah.
age, they
Hmm.
used to go to the Algonquin Hotel in the bar or the restaurant. They had this round table, and Parker and all the writers of that time who were in New York, they used to gather there pretty often, and they would sit and talk about their work. More often than not, they just tore the crap out of each other. There was a movie about it called Mrs. Parker and the Vicious Circle, and it was some of the brightest minds of the age, but a lot of what they did was tearing each other down. It's like I couldn't be there with those people. That would just.
Well, that's what they did, and
And
that's what
it's
I
how
kind of.
they abuse themselves, which is sad. In the lower classes, people went and danced to burn off steam. You weren't trying to insult everybody to prove your sense of, I mean, yeah, you probably had people who did that, but the majority of those people were like, you know what, it's been a hard day. We're going to get this little bit to eat. We're going to listen to some music. We'll sing some songs. Maybe we'll dance, or someone else will dance for the enjoyment of the crowd. It was a way to relax. Whereas I always noticed that when you got up to certain levels of society, they took more joy in tearing into each other than they did. You had some friendships, but generally that group was pretty cruel, you know. it could be really difficult. It's like, oh, I used as a little girl, it was like I would like to have money so I could travel and do things, but I don't know if I would want to have fun. If getting to that level that was the only people you can hang around, I think I could do without the fun.
But that's the whole nature of it. Because again, the separation of class is where the problem lies at. And if the upper crust, that was the thing that the upper crust did, and you came, and if you wasn't born into it or raised in it, it felt awkward until you're up here just gave up and just like, you know what, I'm just going to do as they do, or B, you just walk away from it. And you just take whatever they give to you and just walk away from it.
And I think I would have been that's the person I would be. It's just like
Because it made me think about the one scene in Titanic about Molly Brown and how she was trying to stand up to say, hey, you know, there's people over there. Let's go pick them up. We got extra room in this lifeboat. And all the other wealthy people like her was like, what are you talking about? If you don't sit down and shut up, we're going to throw you out and you could be with them.
she was like, yeah, you can try it. I knew her story because Debbie Reynolds did the movie The Unsinkable Molly Brown.
Right.
And that's how I learned about the Titanic and who she was and whatnot. Because there were lifeboats where people didn't survive just because they couldn't work together.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the one that kept everybody in her boats and the boats that were closer by alive, because she didn't let people get down. She didn't let people tear into each other. She realized that they didn't work together, they were not going to survive. And because of her,
But
there were
it
a
was
lot of
just
people who did survive.
it was just strange how they portrayed it. But then it also makes me think about the whole thing about the Olympic and the Titanic, and the so-called fraud that could have happened. You know about that, right?
No,
There were actually two ships.
I know
There
that
was
the Titanic had a sister ship. That I
the
did.
Olympic.
Okay.
The Olympic was on its last leg. And because they hyped up the fact that the Titanic couldn't be sinkable and all this other stuff, they up here is like the if I could say, the conspiracy theory is that the owner of both ships to cash in on the insurance of the Titanic, because it was quote unquote unsinkable. All of these people who paid in to make sure that nothing happens to anybody on it, the insurance policy that was on it for liability was so high, and the payout was so great that he swapped the names of the Olympic and the Titanic, because the Olympic was on its last leg. They sell the Olympic out there. The Olympic hit the iceberg and sunk. But because there was no one was nowhere near the wiser, because they were pretty much built the same way. It's just that the Olympic was in service a lot longer than the Titanic. So the main voyage of the Titanic was really
the final
the
voyage of the
voyage
Olympic.
of the Olympic.
I don't remember reading that. I'll look it up.
Now that was one of the conspiracy theories here, and it's weird because when you look at the actual history and not what's being told in movies, that could have happened, because there was a lot of money to be made if something happened to all of the people that were really on the boat that sunk.
Well, you had a big chunk of America's wealth on that ship.
Hmm.
You know, you
For a
had,
British ship.
yeah. Well, it was like I said, that time people were doing the tour,
Hmm.
and and this was a point because when um summers, especially in New York, were too hot, they would go across the pond, as they say, and take trains and smaller ships and stuff, and sail or take trains around and go to this village and that village and this big city, and they'd hit all they hit the restaurants and the galleries and orchestras and stuff like that, whatever that those areas were known for, and they'd buy paintings and furniture or whatnot, um, and then come back. And so you made the crossing, and the Titanic was supposed to be the fastest crossing, though. I was like, after hearing about the Titanic, I never wanted to do the Titanic. I always wanted to sail the QE2. As a little girl, I used to dream of growing up, and I don't know. I thought I was going to win an Oscar and have a best-selling book.
Well, it's not too late to win an Oscar. You won't be
But
able to win it for acting, but you can still win it for writing
I
and
was
producing.
I was going to act, direct, produce. I was going to win all these Oscars and make all this money, and I was going to make the crossing back. I was going to go to Europe and do the whatever that day's version of the tour was, and then sail and make the crossing on the QE2, because that used to be a thing. The QE2 no longer sailing. She's
Hmm.
dry docked in
Hmm.
Dubai or something. The Queen Mary, um, is more often than not, the Queen Mary is supposed to make that weekly trip between America and New York and Manchester, but more often than not, she's not. She doesn't.
Hmm.
Sometimes she'll get over there and it'll be weeks before she gets back out. And then sometimes she'll get over here and then she'll be stuck for a month or something. And it's like, what is it with this ship? So it's like,
Well,
okay,
that's the reason why I kind of believe the conspiracy theory about the Olympic and the Titanic.
okay.
It would not have been that hard to swap the identification markings and the numbers.
Well, considering the Titanic was supposed to be brand new, having her in dry dock and getting her painted and everything up, so that she looked like a new ship. Because if I remember correctly, the Olympic was a much older ship
Hmm.
than the Titanic. It was the same chassis and everything, but it was supposed to be a new engine
Hmm.
and whatnot. The ships were not exactly painted the same, so they would have had to repaint that ship as well as outfit it differently, because it
They
wasn't
both
just
they
painting
both
it.
was in dry dock. They both the Olympic was being repaired at the time that the Titanic was being built.
you know and I think they would have had to they may have had, I'm not sure if it would have been worth it, because there was also certain suites that would have had to have been that they would have had to have redone. That's a lot of money to put into pulling that sort of, especially for the time. I mean, there are people who wouldn't think twice about it now, but for the time, I'm just not sure if somebody would be dastardly enough to consider that.
Well, considering everything as a whole here, whatever they hit, if if it was truly a brand new ship, it would not have sank it. That's the thing that always bothered me when they looked at the scientific aspect of it. Because they just say it's like whatever they hit, it wouldn't have ruined a brand new ship. It would have ruined and possibly sunk anything that was retrofitted.
Okay.
So that one piece of evidence is like, okay, so if it if it wasn't, if they was surmising that whatever was going on with the hull of the Titanic after it got hit, after whatever hit it went into it, the suggestion that it wasn't brand new or a brand new, like it wasn't like brand new sheet metal or whatever it was that was on that part of the ship that it hit. It makes you think, it's like, did they really swap it out or not? It just doesn't make any sense, because they wouldn't make a ship that poorly and made the claim that it's unsinkable.
It's interesting because there have been complaints from the Irish
Hmm.
through the years. Because Cunard's still, I mean, Cunard's an Irish company and everything. But I know the Irish dock workers and people who built it have for generations now since then. Because at one point, I think in when my teens, early 20s, they tried to say that, oh, the thing was they were in such a rush to get her built that they cut corners, and the Irish didn't quite do the job they were supposed to do. They had kind of blamed it on the Irish going to trying to cut corners to get the ship out in time. To which I know there were complaints from the Irish. It was like, no, we take a great deal of pride in our workmanship.
So that's what
So
I say. That could have been, if I could say, the red herring, to kind of be like, hmm, this helped us cover up the real truth that it could have we swapped the names of the ships. Because when you look at it from the outside and not really pay too much attention to details, you wouldn't be able to tell the two apart unless you had the actual blueprints.
yeah, unless you had the specs and you went over it, rivet by rivet. But yeah, something was definitely amiss. Something, but also the whole claim that it was unsinkable, you know, was kind of like, dude, you were asking for it. The minute you got up and said it's unsinkable, Mother Nature said, hey, I got some stuff. I'm gonna send it your way. Let's see how
Well,
unsinkable.
to be quite honest, it's like, I've just thought about it. It's like, if it was unsinkable, Mother Nature would be like, "Oh, really? Here comes this monsoon or this hurricane. Flip you over and pour the people out." That's all I was thinking about when you say, it's like, oh yeah, Mother Nature. It's like, yeah, here comes, what is it
I
called?
got a whole bunch of things.
Hurricane Ida hits that area of the ocean and everything, and here it is. The Titanic flips on over and pours people out.
Or even a good tidal wave.
Yeah.
I remember one disaster movies got their start in the 70s. One of the first was the Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah,
You know,
upside down and trying to get out with the boat being upside down.
dude, I wouldn't take Wendella boats on the river for about a couple of years. After that, I wouldn't get in a Wendella boat on the river because I was just so afraid that, oh my God, something could tip this boat. And this ain't even as big as a Titanic. We just go die. I was like, I was scared to death of boats for a while. But, because I remember what was first one was Titanic. Then we got what is the one with the high rise that caught fire?
Towering Inferno.
Towering Inferno. Oh my goodness. And it was always funny because it was those movies were like, okay, who's on their way, who's retiring and who's on their way out and who's on their way in. It was kind of like the Love Boat, the cinematic version of the Love Boat, because you would see like it would be this mix of great old stars and rising stars.
See, now you're making me
And
think about Towering
who
Inferno
was gonna
and the
survive?
mistake and the story mistake that they made.
Which one?
Towering Inferno and the
Yeah.
story
What was
mistake
the
that they
story
made.
mistake?
It was so methodical how the blaze was slowly going up the tower as they was trying to reach the roof.
Oh, as they were trying to get the people
Out.
up and out. Yeah.
Right. And
Um.
it's like no, something like that. It's like y'all gotta be Johnny on the
Whew,
spot because that thing will be like boom, 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 boom. You don't have
yeah, I
time
was
to
about
think.
to.
He's like,
It's
keep
it.
going, keep going, keep going. We
You
gotta
don't
we gotta go,
have.
we gotta go.
I was about to say
It was so methodical. It's like
you don't you wouldn't really, especially because you had so much flammable material, because all of those apartments and a lot of the hallways, they were carpeted.
mm-hmm,
So not only would the carpets catch fire, but especially back then, we didn't have safety protocols on a lot of the materials that were used in those carpets. So about half the people should have asphyxiated
mm-hmm,
before the flames got there because of the off gassing
mm-hmm,
from the carpets. They should have been asphyxiated because the carpets, the minute they started burning and smoldering and whatnot, it's releasing all those gas and stuff. The paint,
mm-hmm.
it's
All would have been like, why do I feel so sluggish and sleepy?
I've got, why? Wait a minute. The fire hasn't hit us, but I've got headaches. I can't see straight. My balance is off. But then a lot of people didn't understand that, and also it was sensationalism. So this was also in the times where you could write movies about stuff and not have to worry as much about doing your research.
Thank God for movies like Backdraft.
Well, but when you think about the research that had to go, I mean, there was a time when they started doing research on things because they realized audiences were getting smarter. Back in the day when they were doing things like Airport or the Towering Inferno, your everyday person wasn't up to what the specs on those things were. So you could kind of make stuff up, you know, even though we now know, oh, that would have never happened, or it would have happened like this, and they would have been able to do that because, or whatever. It's like snakes on a plane. you
But that was
Snakes on a plane.
imaginary. That
Yeah, but
was
I'm
kind of
saying,
imaginary because it's like you have to think about it. It's like the likelihood of something like that happening, not so much. But what if it did? It made sense. It was like, what if it did? It would kind of
it,
make sense.
yeah, but it was just, like I said, people weren't, your everyday average Joe on the street wasn't up on what all the specs were, and a lot we hadn't had back then. You didn't know about off gassing of a lot of those petrochemicals that they were using to make those thick carpets. Those thick carpets were great at sound absorption, but in a fire they could kill you.
They
Just
resist things very well, but they will kill you if they got
yeah,
heated a certain way.
or the stuff that they were using to clean the carpets.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you had wool carpets, the stuff that they were using to clean the carpets, if you had them cleaned often enough, that stuff it doesn't all come out the carpet. It starts to accumulate. So
The
there was
stuff that was in hairspray, the stuff that was in aerosol deodorant,
the paint.
the same thing that was in a spray bottle was pretty much.
You had asbestos in your walls, asbestos in the ceiling. You had a lot of those places had ductwork and stuff that had asbestos lining and whatnot. There was enough stuff in those buildings where a good fire could take out half the people who lived there before they even knew the place was burning down. you would probably be pulling out bodies where the people would have died from asphyxiation or whatnot and had never got burnt.
And that would make the movie that rough. I said when I think about it, it's like that was a major movie plot hole because it would have been different if the fire happened in the middle of the building where you could get some people out at the very bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And then the worry would be like how we get the people at the top
At the top
out. No, this is a fire that started at the bottom and people was rushing to get away off. They're like, no, this does not work. It doesn't work. And it's like, it was just so methodical. I was like, how are people not getting sick? How are they not, like you said, getting asphyxiated? It's like everybody would have been able to be in their right mind by that time.
at the time, but also at the time when those movies came out, I was a kid. I was in my no, this was before my teens. We were much younger. We had to be like 9, 10, 11 or something when those movies were coming
I
out.
know. I
Because
saw
Jaws
reruns.
came out. I was 14 when Jaws came out. And that then shifted
I remember
because we
seeing
were
Towering Inferno in the 1980s when I was a kid. And I knew that
on
Towering
TV.
Inferno was like in the 70s. It came out in the 70s.
It was the
So
early 70s because you had I remember what's his name from It Takes a Thief. He and the he and his secretary were the first people to buy it in that movie. Robert Wagner.
why am I
Um,
remembering like Gene Hackman
Gene
and,
Hackman
and
was in
Leslie
Italian.
Nielsen in the whatchamacallit, the other movie, the Poseidon
Gene
Adventure.
Hackman was in the
Poseidon
Gene
Adventure, I
Hackman
believe.
was in the Poseidon Adventure. He was a brash young minister, and not Shirley MacLaine, Shelley, that was her name. She's very she had did the first Cleopatra Jones. She played the female drug lord, and I can't remember. Shelley Winters, that's it. Shelley Winters was in that one, and because there was a scene, her character buys it because he has to swim through this area to get to where they can turn the in order to get out they have to I forgot what they had to do. They had to do
So it's
something
like
with
a
a pipe.
specialized depressurized door that he had to kind of
Yes,
spin,
and
and you have to like
he
swim
didn't.
up underwater, come back up, and then really try to like put enough torque on the wheel to kind of spin it in the right direction, being that it is upside down.
He doesn't make it all the way through. They're waiting for him. He doesn't make it all the way through. Shelley Winters' character jumps in, finds him, gets him to where he needs to go, revives him, then has a heart attack and dies.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, thank you. And because she was the only person who could do it because she had been the captain of the girls' swim team in high school.
Yeah, it was
Something
something
like that.
about her being some type of athlete because
She had
they
been
was as the water was rising, it's like certain types of people was not making it, and it's like it seems like the more athletic the person was, the more likely they was able to make it as they was going from deck to deck to deck to deck. Well, from deck to deck to deck going downward. And when I say
yeah.
going downward, it's like the bottom of the ship is up here and they're going downward like that.
Yeah.
know?
Because Ernest Borgnine was also in it, and he
Mm-hmm.
had a younger wife. Um, and I'm trying to think: Ernest Borgnine, Shelley Winters, Gene Hackman, because that was kind of the movie that put Gene Hackman in front of a lot of people. Because I think he did that. Then he got
French
excuse me,
Connection.
he got French Connection based on that movie. But yeah, that was it was interesting. It was it was like those movies were like the Love Boat and whatnot, because the joke about the Love Boat got to be it's the place you're going, you get on that show if your career is on the ups or if your career is petering out. It's
Right.
kind of it's that last hurrah, because the Love Boat I can't believe Ginger Rogers did a Love Boat, and that was the last thing I saw her actually sing and dance in. She
Mm-hmm.
performed "Love Will Keep Us Together."
Oh yeah, that's fine.
It was
To
just
come and think of it, you're
hilarious.
right. Because it's like most up and coming TV stars did the Love Boat, but most movie stars, they were usually at the tail end of their career.
And they would do the Love Boat or Fantasy Island.
Mm-hmm.
But she actually got to do the Love Boat, and she had little dance boys and stuff, and she did Love Will Keep Us Together. Um, was it Fred Astaire had already been doing It Takes a Thief.
Mm-hmm.
So he got It Takes a Thief. He never did Love Boat because he got It Takes a Thief. He played the guy's father, Robert Wagner's dad, and then from there he went on and he got Battlestar Galactica,
Right.
and he played Starbuck's dad.
I did not realize that.
It was supposed to be Starbucks. It was one of those things where it was like, okay, is he his dad or isn't he his dad?
Okay.
You know, but yeah, they kind of played with that. You know, maybe he was Starbucks' dad, maybe one, but yeah, he got to do. He got both those series at that time. But it was interesting when I think about those old disaster movies, how many of the actors who they were Hollywood was kind of like, okay, we'll give you one last paycheck. We'll let you die. But it was interesting because who was it? He got to do the Towering Inferno as well. He did the Towering Inferno and he survived it. The woman he falls in love with dies.
I'm trying to think who could it be.
She was an older woman. She had black hair. O.J. Simpson saves her cat. And part of in the Towering Inferno, they had that elevator that went up and down the outside of the building. And one of the ideas is we will take people down in the elevator, and they had a helicopter that was supposed to help lower it, and something happened, a gust of wind hit them or something, and she went out the window because one of the windows was broken.
Well, it was glass.
It was glass.
It was glass, and as I believe, if I remember correctly, it was getting close to where the fire was at and the pressure that was inside of it blew out part of that glass, and she flew out with it.
It not only blew out part of the glass, but the helicopter that was taking them down, because it was still connected to that track outside.
Right.
The helicopter was just supposed to stabilize it. When that explosion hit, it came halfway off that track. The top half, it kind of went this way. And that's why she went down.
Right, straight out.
She went straight out because she couldn't hold on. Fred Astaire, that's it. She and Fred Astaire, and then that, because in that movie he was playing kind of a con man. It was like, oh my goodness, you're playing your It Takes a Thief character. There was something about Fred Astaire in his later years was playing con men all over.
But that kind of makes sense. See, we got comics that looks like that. Oh, there she is. We got Queen Glamazonia here. Yeah, Fred Astaire was so talented. Yep. Like I remember, Irwin Allen directed The Towering Inferno. Yep.
Yeah, those were the big movies. But he meets the lady. O.J. Simpson saves her cat. But and he convinced her to get on the elevator and go, because she didn't want to go along. And he was like, I'll be down there before you know it. And because he and another guy, I keep forgetting who the other guy was. I can't remember if Robert Vaughn was in Towering Inferno. My mind wants to say he was. But there was some guy because he and the rest of the men that are left in the that bar, casino, whatever, they tied themselves to the pillars, and they had to go up and because they had the water tanks, And that's how they put the fire up. They blew up the water tanks because Steve McQueen. That's it.
Right.
That's right. Steve McQueen, both Steve McQueen and what's his name with the salad dressing? Paul Newman were in that movie, and they didn't work together.
Yeah.
They were in the movie. They were old friends, and they did not work together. Yes, he was one of the best.
The only person that ever danced with Jerry Mouse.
He was a good dancer, but if you've ever, there were other dancers. I don't think he was the best male dancer in Hollywood because you had the Nicholas brothers who were also working around that time, and they were phenomenal. You know, and there were other dancers who he had the personality and stuff, and he made the women look as good as they made him.
Mhm.
But when I think of some of the other dancers in Hollywood, male and female, I think from a just a technical standpoint, because you think of some of the stuff that the Nicholas brothers would do. And even the
they were
young
just not
standing,
for one style of dance. They eventually encompassed everything, but they was more known for tap in the very beginning, and then
yeah,
they just
that's what
went
Hollywood.
overboard.
That's what Hollywood hired them for, was their tapping ability. Sammy Davis and his family, they got started in some of those movies and stuff. So there were some really great dancers. There were some great male and female dancers of color, but they
It was
weren't.
Kelly that did it. Okay.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Invitation to the Dance, is that the one that he dances with
Jerry
Jerry
Miles
Miles?
did.
Because he also has the dance with the two Arabian dudes, and they get tall and they get short, and there's a whole thing there.
But I remember the documentary that showed how they was able to combine the two. And it was like that showed how much Gene Kelly was an innovator when it came to dance, because he had to do it without no prompts, no cues, and nobody that's really there to kind of give him ideas where Jerry might be on the screen.
Yeah, I always thought that there were those people who were a top tier of dancers, you know. Um, in regards to, I never tried to pick a stare over Kelly. I always thought they were very equal in their abilities. But Kelly was more the athletic, Astaire was about elegance and grace and all of that, whereas Kelly he was more the athletic dancer. It was more, yeah, they did. MGM made some of the best musicals.
Well,
MGM made some of the best musicals back then,
that's
and I learned dancers. I loved dancers. I fell in love with Leslie Caron and Ann Miller. She had the fastest feet ever. Ann Miller and she was dancing. She was tapping on Broadway up until her 60s. Girlie was tearing it up.
that's one genre of movie that I definitely see will not make a comeback.
Well,
The
we've
musical
had a
one,
few. I don't think we'll get a singing, dancing musical as of the spectacles of our childhood. And even in our childhood, they weren't making those movies back then. The movies we were seeing as kids were the movies that MGM and them put out, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. And then as we progressed, musicals became less and less, and also they began to change about musicals. I think some of I really loved when they did Chicago, but then I've always loved Bob Fosse's work. So seeing Chicago done on the movie screen made me really happy. I love Bob Fosse's work. So seeing that, all that jazz, which is of course Fosse again.
well, the reason I say what I said is that the type of music that is popular today really doesn't lend very well to storytelling unless it's abstract storytelling.
or it's, you know, it's a soundtrack. It's back when we were kids, musicals were, and some musicals had the thinnest of storylines. It was mostly about the musical numbers. If you think of those old Andy Hardy films, you know,
But even with Andy Hardy, even the musical numbers played into the story. You could, if you listen to the soundtrack without seeing the movie, you could pretty much gather what the movie was about because each movie scene was, you know, song to song to song to song to song to song to song.
but and
Nowadays,
yet,
the music doesn't lend towards that. It'd be
no,
like,
because I've seen Wicked. Okay, Wicked is amazing. Wicked is great. Those women tear that crap up, and the music is built into the characters. They don't just go spot off and sing anything. The music is part of the story. It's the characters. It's if it's not pushing the story forward, it's giving you insight into the characters. So the music is you I watch Wicked, and it's like, okay, I could not. It's like the Wizard of Oz. I could not picture that without those numbers. If I only had a brain, somewhere over the rainbow.
I think you kind of missed the point that I was making here because Wicked, to me, because it was a on Broadway, it fits the genre. I don't think we're going to have Boys in the Hood the musical. I'm
No,
sorry,
but
it's not,
Boys in
that's
the
not going to happen because the soundtrack for Boys in the Hood does not typically lend to a story that could be made into like an
Cooley
all
High
thing
could
type
have.
stuff.
Cooley High could have. It had
Yeah,
Cooley
I will
High
agree,
had
but Cooley High was
ass
back in
kicking
'70s.
soundtrack. Cooley High had a soundtrack that, you know, in fact, Cooley High was one of those Cooley High was one of those the first movies that, you know, outside of big event movies like Shaft or Superfly, that the music was
Mhm.
crucial to the movie because it gave you such a sense of place and time. You know, yeah, you couldn't make a Broadway melody of whatever year these days. You would lose what it would cost to redo any of those great old musicals back then. You couldn't do that these days. So just the money it would cost. Just think if we tried to do a Ziegfeld Follies. you
Yeah,
know, it
I,
would it would cost as much to make a Ziegfeld Follies movies nowadays as it would to do Star Wars.
yeah. There's a couple of things that I want to bring up. That's a good question, and my answer may be completely different from Elaine's here about why didn't they make Wicked one movie?
They made it one play, as I understood. I don't know. Other than the point of they were trying to make it so dense that they realized if they wanted to keep the musical numbers and whatnot, they would have to, or maybe they just figured, you know, we'll make more money if we split it in two.
I
I don't know. You know,
I
I love if you came up and said, "Hey, we can do a truncated 2 hour version of Fellowship of the Ring," I'd rip your throat out and speed it back to you. You know, because I already know what it took just to make the extended 4.5 something hour version of that movie. To make it a 2 hour movie, you got to cut so much of that. You know, and the theatrical release was almost 3 hours, if not over. So there you have to take so much out of that what makes Middle Earth and those characters who they are and the connections and stuff. No, I don't it could have been just a money decision, or it could have been somebody just looked at it and said, there's no way we can do this in one movie. You know, I'm not sure. I love West
wait, wait,
Side
wait, wait.
Story, but West Side Story is
You
in many
you
ways is
jumping the
Romeo and
gun.
Juliet set to music.
You jumping the gun here because I'm about to get ready to say I agree with this latter what you said. It was more about the money. because if they did it in one movie, it would have been more of a condensed version of Wicked, and a lot of people would have been upset. A lot of people would have been upset here. So this way they could actually cover more ground if they broke it up into like certain acts, and if they broke it up into certain acts, they could go ahead and expound on it. But from what I heard, because I haven't watched the movie as of yet, I have not watched the movie as of yet, I would probably hate Ariana Grande's character more so now than I did with the play. It was just
Okay.
kind of like what we're going, where
I
we're at
find
right now.
Galinda to be a headache. And West Side Story is just, as I said, it's Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an updated Romeo and Juliet set to some really great music. It's Shakespeare. Of course, it's got a great dramatic storyline because it's just Shakespeare. They may have updated the language and put great music to it, but basically, it's Romeo and Juliet. In fact, eighth grade, we actually had to watch West Side Story because we were reading through Romeo and Juliet, and my grandma was just really happy about that because that was one of her favorite musicals. And yes, what
Okay,
is it?
well, the reason why
Robot
we haven't got to
9-606
Mightor
is talking
as of
about
yet
Mightor.
because the person who wanted to talk about Mightor is not here. You know, when one of us is away, and that was kind of like their lead topic here.
We kind of not go on it.
It's not like I'm not prepared. We could go ahead and talk about it here in a few minutes here. And yeah, Mightor is an animated feature here. We're not. It's like we're going from musicals to cartoons now. So
We can talk
I
about
got to
werewolves.
understand why it threw you off. It's like I don't remember
Thinking we weren't
of
supposed to.
Mightor.
We got started on something else as we normally do. Joe and I got started on something, and next thing you know, it led into the Titanic and traveling on the QA2, and here the hell we are.
Yep. So to get to what Robot B was talking about, we're going to bring in the mighty Mightor, or at least the intro about how
Intro.
Mightor became Mightor.
Oh God,
While on a hunting trip, Tor and his faithful companion Tog rescue an ancient hermit. Grateful, the old man gives Tor a club, which possesses great powers. Tor raises the club, and he becomes Mightor, and Tog is transferred into a fire-breathing dragon. Together, they become champions of good and the nemesis of evil.
And the weird thing about Mightor, and let me bring this back over because we don't need that anymore. The weird thing about Mightor was the fact that they billed him as the superhero of prehistoric times. And the first thing that I thought about, and I had to catch myself because I was about to go in this whole conspiracy theory aspect of Mightor. It's like, wait a second. If Mightor actually came out first, and then we look at things like Flintstones and his own show, it's like, wouldn't Captain Caveman and Mightor be one and the same character because of the idea of the club? Because
I
the
watched
club had
Captain
ancient
Caveman.
mystical powers up in it. And like I said, because Cliff is not here, I can't ask that question because he's the expert on Mightor. I barely
don't
remember
know.
this character as a kid.
I don't know Mightor. I know Captain Caveman. I know Captain Caveman a bit, but I don't know Mightor. So I can't.
Yeah, because Mightor, I believe, was 67. He came out in 1967. Captain Caveman, I could have sworn was 1970 in the 70s because of the Flintstones Family Hour. And then eventually they started off with him, with his own show with him and the Teen Angels. But he was supposed to have been the prehistoric superhero even then. So the crossover between Mightor and Captain Caveman would have been like, did Mightor devolve as time went on, by the time you got to the Flintstones era,
to become Captain Caveman.
yes,
But that meant he was like, "Hi, I'm big and I've got muscles and I look slightly Asian too. Hi, I'm just a little hairy dude with a thick Captain Caveman."
Robot, I know he's a different character, but I'm just, it was in my whole conspiracy theory because the timeline would kind of fit.
Joe was
Because
big on
again,
conspiracy.
the Flintstones to me were closer towards modern time, while the original Mightor series was further away, way further away. So it's kind of like, when does the Flintstones really fit into this, conspiracy theory mindset of possibly Captain Caveman could have been Mightor or a version of Mightor because of the club.
I
Because
think
without the
maybe,
club, you have no Captain Caveman. Without
yeah.
the club, you have no Mightor.
Well,
So somewhere
maybe,
down the line, that mantle, because of that mystical club, comes into play.
maybe Mightor was asleep and Captain Caveman snuck into his cave and whacked him in the head, stole the club, and decided he was going to do this stuff himself. I don't know. All I know is Hanna Barbera has, it's not like continuity is
Yes,
king. And so, if they did my tour, like I said, I don't remember my tour.
I don't
Um,
remember it either.
and it may have been they put my tour out, my tour didn't do as well. And
Well,
then
you
they
know
decided
who
to
they
go
teamed them up
through.
with, right?
I don't
Yeah,
know my tour, so I don't know who he was teamed up with.
he was teamed up with Moby Dick, the super whale. So you have to
Moby
be
Dick was a
mindful. Hanna
super whale.
Barbera back in the day always teamed up their superhero characters with something else, such as you had Space Ghost. It was what it was like. Who was, I forgot who Space? Oh, Space. It was Space Ghost and Dino Boy. You
I'm
had
gonna let my bird handle the.
Birdman and the Galaxy Trio.
Okay, I'm gonna let the bird handle the rest of the show.
Yeah.
That's
So
just
those are the things here. I don't know, and I don't know the answer to that anime, but I do know in comic book form for TV superheroes they did meet up. I do know that they did meet up, and yes, and Robot is confirming that here.
I all I know is I liked Captain Caveman. He was funny. He was, he was sweet. He was funny. I liked the show, but I don't know. I that's just me, you know.
Again, I'm saying this more of a facetious conspiracy theory because of the simple fact that even though it could be different universes, it's just too coincidental that their powers were based upon the mystical club that they held.
Maybe they were pulling an early version of DC and Marvel's Infinite Earths. You know, they maybe I mean if push came to shove, they could say they came up with that idea first. you
Well,
know,
again, it's all within the same development company because it's all Hanna Barbera, so they could recycle certain things over and over and over again, just like how they recycle what the Impossibles with the gold trotters.
oh,
Same powers, same everything. The proof of concept was done in the Impossibles, and then they gave it to the and they made the Globetrotters into the Super Globetrotters using the exact same power sets.
now
It
see,
happens a lot in Hanna Barbera.
I remember the Globetrotters,
Mhm.
um, but I don't remember the Super
Yeah,
Globetrotters.
Hercules, Curious. We actually showed that episode where
Yeah,
Space Ghost actually came to the Hercules planet to reclaim. I think it was like this one meteor.
we got in trouble. We won't do it again.
No, I don't mind that. I don't mind the copyright stuff here.
Let's not do it again. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
It,
exactly.
it was a lot like Thor's hammer, and it's kind of like, what if a caveman comedian got Mightor's club? When you think of Captain Caveman, because I love Captain Caveman, and he was always pulling stuff out that fur. And I don't know. Captain Caveman was funny and cuddly, and
See,
Mightor
now
just
you're
looked
making
like
me think about Captain.
looked like he should be working the male strip show section of Hanna-Barbera.
See, now you got me thinking about the version of Captain Caveman that was in the movie Scoob.
Okay, I don't think I saw Scoob. I think John
You
watched it.
you don't remember seeing the movie Scoob
John
as in Scooby Doo. It was a
John
Scooby Doo movie
John
where they,
has watched just about every Scooby Doo movie, and like I said, John was the one who remembers 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo.
you didn't
So
tell them right.
no, I
Don't make them
didn't.
watch the Curse of the 13th Ghost movie.
I'm not, but he's the one who was more the lore master in Scooby Doo movies and stuff like that. He knows all of that. So when there's something about Scooby Doo, I do usually refer to him and ask questions.
Yes, the Harlem Globetrotters became the Super Globetrotters for a season here using the powers of the Impossibles.
The Three Stooges
And
had
the
a
Three
scent of
Stooges became the
Superman.
yeah, and the Three Stooges became the Super Stooges. I forgot which power set that they had here.
Oh
No,
my
they actually the
goodness!
Super Stooges was also using the Impossibles power set because what we call it, Curly was Coil Man, was eventually a form of Coil Man in Super Stooges.
Okay. Yeah, John liked
Yes,
Vincent Price
that
doing
was the the original TV series of the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, where they had somebody doing Vincent Price voice as Vincent Von Ghoul.
no, it's Vincent Price doing the
Well,
ghost
not in the movie The Curse of the 13 Ghosts, but in the original TV
in
series
the
he did.
original series. Yeah, I told you I watched 13 Ghosts with John because Tony Shalhoub was in the movie,
Mhm.
and he was a big Tony Shalhoub fan. And so, there were a few years where it's like, Mommy, 13 Ghosts is on. It's like, okay. We grab our popcorn and sit there, and we would joke about the deaths and stuff so it wouldn't be as scary for him, you know. But he's actually not a big scary movie fan. It's just his mommy is very strange.
Mhm.
I am a strange parent.
Well, considering that 13 Ghosts really didn't deal too much with death, it was more along the lines of getting the ghost back into the box.
But the ghosts were all murderous.
Right.
They were murderous because poor Shaggy got his butt handed to him.
Mhm.
You know, but John really likes the fact that the black chick is the one who comes through in the end and helps
E-
save the family.
Exactly, Robot. That's the real reason why we can't talk about the movie The Curse of the 13 Ghosts. That brought
Scrappy Doo.
everything full circle and into an end. The Curse of the 13 Ghosts movie was the bridging between that TV series and the rest of Scooby-Doo lore. And one thing happened in that movie that we cannot talk about, or we upset Elaine's youngest.
Please, I for the sake of the peace of my household,
Yeah,
we're not going there.
yeah.
Okay, we just
So
not.
if you've seen the Curse of the movie Curse of the 13 Ghosts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And since you mentioned said character, then you definitely will understand why we can't talk about it.
Because he be loving some Scrappy. Okay, he be loving him some
Yeah.
Scrappy. We're not going.
So
When
that
Scrappy
one
Doo
that
turned out to be the villain in the first Scooby Doo movie, I had to hear about that for a month. Okay, he was not happy.
yeah, he was not happy, just like he wouldn't be happy to find out that they changed the lore.
Yeah, he just
He
he
would be
loved him some
flipping. He
Scrappy.
would probably be flipping out right about now.
Yeah. Luckily, he's in my room right now, watching my TV, and I don't know what he's watching right now because I'm
Well,
not in there, so I can't tell you. I've raised
well,
interesting children.
well, put it this way, Robot. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you via the chat.
Okay.
That way, you don't have to audibly say it, and he's no worse for wear here.
He's none the wiser.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden I hear Granny Clampett singing that I got joy, 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 joy down in my heart. I don't know why. Sweetie, I'm in my 60s. Okay. The stuff that pops into my brain, would just put someone half my age would be into the funny farm. And now I hear they're coming to take me away. Oh, I need to go to bed. I need to eat and go to bed. I am going delusional. I have no idea what he's typing. Why didn't the Beverly Hillbillies get a cartoon? I don't know.
I don't know. That one you have to ask Filmway Productions here. I'm not
Yeah,
certain
I was about to
if
say,
it was as popular enough, but I do know that they had comic books. Beverly Hillbillies had comic books. I do know that much.
yeah. Also, I think in some ways, Beverly Hillbillies was also looked at as more adult fare in many ways, considering some of the storylines for the time in which that was on TV. You had Miss Jane, and it's so funny because Jane Hathaway had the hots for Jethro, even though the lady that played Miss Jane was a lesbian.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
I guess maybe I remembered the documentary that I seen incorrectly, but that was later on in life because she was once married at one time.
There were a lot of women in Hollywood who were lesbians who were married because they needed to keep working.
Okay.
And people would sometimes ask, well, why aren't you married? Especially back then during McCarthyism and whatnot. Barbara Stanwyck was a lesbian, but you know um, they had choices they had to make if they wanted to keep careers. And so you had a lot of lesbians in Hollywood who, just like you had a lot of closeted gay men in Hollywood. But when you're trying to keep that career up, you will make choices and do things that go against your nature because you're trying to keep that career. No, Jeff was so manly he converted her. I have to say, my favorite characters were Ellie Mae, just because, Ellie Mae would be the type to come home with a dragon or something as crazy as, say, a great white shark, and it would be your best buddy. Um, she just had that power over critters. And granted, it's like, well, maybe because I kind of knew women like Granny. And it was like, that's gonna be me. I get
Granny
old enough,
was a
I'm gonna be Granny.
Granny was a character. I like her to death.
I'm gonna be making my own lye soap.
She literally thought she literally thought the frogman, the Navy frogman, would actually turn into a frog. Stuff like that. I was like, oh, that's a beautiful strapping man to marry our Ellie Mae and this, that, and the other. It's like, what did he do for a living? He's a frog man.
What?
A what? A frog man.
But I
So
love
she would go
her.
out to the cement pot and everything, and then all of a sudden there's a frog. It's like, oh no, he turned back. We got to figure out how to get him back to him being a man. We can't let Ellie Mae see him like that.
The Beverly Hillbillies allowed me to enjoy. As I've said before, I will say again. Growing as a child of the '60s, we had such a great exposure to things. You know, um, symphonic jazz, classical music. One of the things I loved about the Beverly Hills Billies is the guys who did the music, Earl and Lester. Um, they actually appeared, and they were hot for Cousin Pearl. They were hot for Cousin Pearl. And one of the episodes they came and they had made up this song, Pearl, 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 they'll give your love to Earl. I forgot something that he slicks his hair with possum fat. It's just really, it was really lovely and ridiculous. But it was, I think the Beverly Hillbillies, we have that to thank for things like the Grand Ole Opry, which of course all those Grand Ole Opry shows then led into Hee Haw, you know. And I knew even hardened thug boys who were into Hee Haw. If for no
See,
other reason, it
now
was
you're making me. You see, now you're making me think about Beverly Hillbillies here and how cousin Pearl used to always give Granny grief because Jeffrey ended up getting married and ended up getting married to this guy named Shorty, and they showed the picture. It was just like,
poor poor Max Bear had
yeah,
to play that double character of Jethro and Jethlene.
Jeffrey,
And
yeah.
and he just, you know, you could just, I mean, he was having, he made the most out of it, but it's like, oh, that's got to be such a headache. You know, they have to play that character. And Cousin
It was
Pearl, of
very rare
course,
that he had
was
to play it on screen, but with cousin Pearl was every time cousin Pearl was there, she was back in the in the old country,
she
you know,
lived up
back in
in
the
Casa.
hills. You saw Max Bear as Jeff Ring,
Yeah, she was
but when she's in Beverly Hills, you always saw Jethro. It's very rare that you saw Jethro and Jeff Ring together.
that's true. Also, the lady who played Cousin Pearl on Beverly Hillbillies was
Was on
also,
Petticoat Junction, I
she
thought.
was the owner of the Shady Rest on Petticoat. So it was interesting how many actors they had crossing into different series back and forth
Well,
like that.
to be
Because
quite honest, and to Queen's comment here, no, well, I wouldn't say its
yes
own
and no.
universe, but the universe was really kind of like a mix between Green Acres, Petticoat Junction, and the Beverly Hillbillies.
They were
Because
all,
Granny was actually, you know, made a couple of guest appearances on Green Acres, but she
yes.
has a reoccurring appearances on Petticoat Junction because of Pearl.
Yeah. In
And
fact,
Pearl used to come onto Beverly Hillbillies a lot, but we never had
Filmway,
anybody from Green Acres cross over to Beverly Hillbillies
no.
at all. But we did have people come from Green Acres over to Petticoat Junction. So
Filmways
Petticoat
was its
Junction,
own
Green Acres,
universe.
and Beverly Hillbillies could be considered their own universe in that aspect
Yeah,
here.
it was Filmways, and
Yeah.
Filmways was Filmways did not let its talent, because this was at a time when you still had the studio system. So, you know, this was at a time when we were coming out the 50s, the 60s, even the 70s, because it's Harrison Ford. One of the things that Harrison Ford likes to brag about is he was the last contract actor in Hollywood. And to get a contract in Hollywood was, you got paid whether you worked or not. When you got a contract, you got a weekly paycheck from them. You didn't just get a paycheck for doing nothing, because contract actors, um, they had, when I was in film school, I stayed in a building the year I was at the AFI that used to be one of the places that contract actors used to stay in, and you had to take classes. You took elocution. You had to know how to. You not only had to take acting classes, but classes in elocution, singing, dancing. Um, the guys had to take classes in swordplay and horseback riding and things like that. So there was, if even if you weren't actively making a movie, you weren't just hanging around at home. And then a lot of the younger women also, when they had parties and stuff, they would have the younger women and men show up to like beef up the crowd and things. So being under contract, um, it it depending on what you did, it was necessarily not considered a picnic, but it kept a lot of people fed. It also kept a lot of people working, you know, especially in like California, New York. There were certain companies that kept people under contract because what is it, Phil Silvers and whatnot were doing their shows in New York. And they always had people that were working and would show up and do crowd scenes and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, they filmways in a lot of studios, if you were under contract, it at least kept you working, even if it was like you were, you know, native number 10.
Mhm.
At least you earned your paycheck.
Okay, so Lurch from the Alice family showed up. Yep, that's true. He popped
Yeah.
up in the window in one of the scenes, and yeah, the Alice family was a part of the Batman universe.
And
My,
Batman, they used to get some interesting people. It got to the point where I think people were actually fighting to get, like, when they would do
the wall climbing scenes here.
yeah, because I think what Salvador Dali or someone got
Yeah, Salvador Dali, Dick Clark. It was a whole bunch of
yeah,
different
there are a
characters.
lot of interesting people they got
Sammy
to do
Davis
it.
Jr.,
Yep. Paul Dent.
Liberace.
Oh my God, the Liberace one is hilarious. That one is just wild.
But here's the question to here's the question to the chat here. Do you know the unique happenstance between the Green Hornet and Batman 66 or 67?
Is this 67? I think it is.
Yeah, 67. Yeah, the Scooby Gang met both the Addams Family and Batman.
And Batman.
Yep, that's true too. But yeah, there's the TV series, Batman 67 TV series, and the Green Hornet TV series had a special, unique bond. And most people don't realize what that unique bond was.
They had crossovers on those two shows, did they?
It go beyond
yeah, I mean,
it go beyond the crossovers because there's actual scenes in one of the TV shows that solidifies the relationship between the two shows as being, you know, sister shows here.
You know,
yeah, Batman met the Green Hornet. Yes, that is correct. Batman 67 was the only time that they ever met, but the Green Hornet show did something different to solidify that relationship, and most people don't know it.
Was it the
I
team
can
up?
I can tell you what it is
Was
if
it
you want me to.
I'm trying to. Was it a team up against one of? I'm trying to remember.
I remember on the Batman 67 TV show that Batman and Robin eventually saved the Green Hornet and Kato from being stamped. I forgot who was the villain that made them into stamps, but Batman and Robin sent them back to the machine to make them whole again.
To make them people again. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I always used to trying to think. Oh goodness, it came in my brain.
But that was on Batman 67. On the Green Hornet show, people on Green Hornet will be watching Batman 67. That solidified the relationship between Batman 67 and Green Hornet being sister shows, because the ongoing joke about the Batman show being on the television set for all these different people is that Green Hornet was supposed to be taken more as the serious superhero show, where Batman 67 was fantasy.
They were also
while Green Hornet was more realistic.
They were also being shot on the same lot.
Exactly.
You know?
They're being shot on the same lot, but they used different scenes for the car scenes when they would go out. It's like when the Black Beauty would actually come out of the Green Hornet hideout, they use a different alley scene while they use the middle of nowhere road construction scene for Batman.
Yeah.
The hideout was a little bit different. The mansion was a little bit different, but it was pretty much the same set.
But the same lot. You know, because
exactly the Colonel Gum billboard.
Colonel Gum, yeah. My favorite superhero crossover didn't involve other superheroes though. It was when George Reeves as Superman went on I Love Lucy. You know, that I love because
The lie. It's like, wait a second, you marry her? Yeah.
and
And they call me Superman.
Superman.
They call me
I
Superman.
just love that. It was like, yes, okay. I because I grew up watching I Love Lucy and I grew up watching Superman because they used to have Superman on there, and the fact that he got to do I Love Lucy. And I only think I don't know if they requested him or he. It was like I know he was a fan. That much I do know. I know he was a big fan of Lucille Ball.
It was weird how ABC saw them as similar to characters. It wasn't just ABC, it was more the production staff, the executive producers and writers. This was
Yeah,
kind of like a in studio gag between the two of them. And yes, Robot is right because towards I think it was either like season 3 of Batman is when you start seeing more if I could say jokes about Green Hornet being on the television. But ever since Green Hornet season 1, they used to put Batman on the television to make
well,
it
it was a reminder also to the audience. Hello, we own both of these.
right. Mm-hmm.
You know, we own both of these because you could then put them on.
Yeah.
You could use them. You could. They were interchangeable. You know, and as far as the not so much the network, but the producers they were assets. You know, they were assets.
And when he was not drunk. That I would preface that with like when he was not drunk.
He was the Superman of my childhood.
He was
And I
not of
will.
my childhood, but I
He
have
was the
seen his Superman. It's like it is pretty great until you see the documentaries of the scenes and stuff that he did while he was drunk, and I was like, now that Superman to me is hilarious. It's hilarious.
Well, you know what? So long as they could push him onto the set and get him to say their lines half legibly, people back then got away with a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't start, the joke in Hollywood is like, so long as you don't actually get arrested for it, you could basically do whatever you wanted. And then, of course, the 90s started, people started going to AA meetings suddenly in the industry because they were not, the stuff got harder, and the schedules didn't get harder, but it was just the stuff they were using got harder. And people, at least back then, there were certain guardrails. And so long as you stayed within certain limits where they could still get you to get what they needed out of you, at the end of the day, they weren't as up in your face. Around the 90s, they started making people go to Alcoholics Anonymous and whatnot because, specifically because they were trying not to have, especially after Robert Downey Jr.'s famous meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, he lived just less than half a mile or so from that hotel he got busted in. But, after that, people started looking at things a little more closely because it was like, it started becoming, a liability. It got harder and harder to keep people straight. Hey, Charlie Sheen still isn't, getting any real work. Mm-hmm. After the whole Tiger Milk thing. Charlie Sheen's career, the whole whatever that stuff is he was doing, yep. He still doesn't have much of a career. Every few years somebody goes, "Hey, what's up with Charlie?" Do a "What's up, Charlie?" with Charlie Sheen segment of something.
Right. I want to address this comment real quick here. It says that Green Hornet never had the same impact as Batman. Of course, it didn't, because people tuned in to watch Batman, but people tuned in to watch Kato in Green Hornet. That's the difference. Green Hornet as a character in his own TV series took second fiddle to Kato, who happened to be
Bruce Lee.
one of the world's greatest martial artists, Bruce Lee. People tuned in to see what Bruce Lee was going to do on that show.
My
Even
grandmother loved him.
overseas in the Asian markets, they had to retitle the show from Green Hornet to the Kato Show because of it. So yes, it sank in the ratings because the main character was not as the mainstay for the series, unlike Batman. People love Adam West Batman. Not too many people like again, I can't even think of the actor's name as Green Hornet, but everybody remembers Kato, everybody remembers Bruce Lee and everything that he did when they got to fight scenes. He was the man. So that's the reason why, it didn't have the same impact. Sadly, the actor who played Superman, a lot of substance abuse. Yep.
There are
And
a
he
lot
died
of
short.
actors who
Mhm.
have lost careers because, like I said, Charlie Sheen. It was people think we look at Robert Downey Jr. as a miracle because there are actors who were starting when he started who are dead or you know half the women who did movies with him, like who did movies like The Breakfast Club. Ali Sheedy isn't really working anymore. Um, Winona Ryder, after she got busted, nobody would touch her, and then
Mhm.
finally they picked her up for Stranger Things, and now she's back. But before he and then she went from because she was the it girl. I remember Ali Sheedy was the it girl. And
Well,
then,
Ali Sheedy does more stuff after.
Winona Ryder, sorry, Winona Ryder.
Right.
When Winona Ryder was one of those it girls, and then she got busted for shoplifting in Beverly Hills, and then nobody wanted to touch her. And then she got Stranger Things, and she went from one of the it girls to mom. They deglamorized her a lot, but she kind of liked it because it gave her a way to say, "Hey, hello, in case you guys don't remember, I can actually act."
Yep. I mean, I just think about Ali Sheedy. It's like she did kind of disappear after War Games.
Ali Sheedy, she did a few things after War Games, but nothing,
Not major movies, but she
nothing
made
to that.
TV appearances. It was more like TV movies, but I thought about major movie appearances, especially after her popularity. After War
Um,
Games, it was just like, oh, Ali Sheedy was in this particular Lifetime movie or that particular television movie, or it's like,
well, but it was a lot of girls, a lot of the young women in the Brat Pack
yeah.
who they were there for a while.
Mhm.
John Hughes made a star out of what's her name, Pretty in Pink, Sweet
But
16
again,
Candles and
people
stuff.
don't remember the happy happenstance with Molly Ringwald.
Molly Ringwald. She was at
People
one
don't.
point.
Do you know what set put Molly Ringwald on the map?
Which
It
movie?
wasn't Hughes. I can tell you that right now.
Okay, which one put Molly Ringwald on the map?
People keep forgetting about season 1 of Facts of Life. She was on that show. Facts of Life brought the attention of Hughes to her once she refused the contract to stay on with
Yes,
Facts of Life because they was going through the whole thing about revamping it for season 2. A lot of the girls did not get that call back. They wanted to bring her back, but they wanted to bring her back on it kind of like a case by case basis or episode by episode basis, and she refused. Then Hughes, then she did a couple of screen tests for Hughes, and Hughes picked her up, and career blew up. But she
yeah,
got her start in season
but
1 of Facts of Life. If
it
the Facts of Life did not drop the ball, we would not have Molly Ringwald, the movie actress.
but then after a while, she kind of fell out of fashion,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that happens sometimes. You get a couple, you have your little moment, and then you age out. especially for women. You have your moment, and then suddenly she's no longer high school age. I think her last big movie that she got to do was The Breakfast Club.
Because you
Yeah,
had Pretty in Pink and what was the other
I thought
one?
Breakfast Club came at the end. Pretty
No,
16
I remember that.
Candles, Pretty in Pink, all of that led up to Breakfast Club, didn't it?
No, I thought Breakfast Club would. I thought Pretty in Pink was the last one because 16 Candles, I believe, came before. 16
Yeah.
Candles, I believe, came before Breakfast Club, and then Pretty in Pink was after.
Okay, but yeah, then Pretty in
Breakfast
Pink
Club was the movie that made her to make you want to go see Pretty in Pink.
and then Pretty in Pink was like one of the last big ones she got to do, you know. Um, and luckily
No,
for
I
me,
did not see that. That's one that I have not seen.
Space
Space Hunter.
Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
that's
not
right.
seen that one.
She played the kid. Michael Ironside was the bad guy. And Siskel and Ebert actually they panned the movie, but they both loved him. Which I thought was really cool. They were like, okay, that Ringwald kid's not too bad, but did you see Michael Ironside?
Yep. Thanks, Robot. I would have never remembered Van Jones' name. I could see him, but I couldn't just because again, Van Williams was not a very memorable actor as far as being a Green Hornet.
I don't even think he did. I don't think he did much outside of Green Hornet, did he?
I agree, Queen. Bruce Lee is the only reason why, and trust me, I used to watch Green Hornet religiously only because of Kato. Because the way that they portrayed Kato in Green Hornet, unlike how they did in the what's his face version of it, Kato technically did not work for Britt. He was kind of like his own independent actor that lived in the mansion with them. The way that it was explained is that Britt's father hired him, and he served a particular role in his organization that Britt never phased out.
Ah.
So that's the reason why, if you ever notice in those scenes where they was talking about what they was going to do to figure out how to solve this crime, Britt always talked to him as a equal instead of as a junior, like how Batman would talk down to Robin. And to me, that was like one of the coolest things ever. It's like,
well, also one of the differences is Robin is supposed to be a high schooler, whereas Kato,
right? Yeah, he was supposed to be 16.
He's supposed to be around 16 years old, whereas Kato is a grown ass
man. Mm-hmm.
So he's, if he had talked down to him, well,
when I say talk down, it's like it wasn't like the employer employee. It was we are equals.
Yeah, as opposed to Batman is it's more like a mentorship with Robin. He's like schooling him,
like finger.
I know. Hey, I remember being around LA, and there'd be little posters stuck on things that said "Free Winona."
Yep.
Oh, shall we play a game?
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk about let's and it's
how about a nice game of chess? No, I want to play global thermonuclear war. Are you sure, Professor Falcon?
Michael Ironside, I loved. I loved the Michael Ironside in V. And when he left the series, I almost quit watching it because Michael Ironside was the dude for me. I love that voice. And I just watch a lot. The whole reason I watched the first time I saw it, what is it with the bugs? He's leading the guys. He plays their lieutenant. And it's their fight. It's about fight. It's based on the Bradbury. It's with the bugs, and I can't recall the name.
What you're not talking about?
Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
Starship
I'm about to
Troopers.
say that's like the movie that I can't stand because it.
I love the fact they had Clancy Brown in it,
Mhm.
and the fact that it had Michael Ironside in it.
Yeah, but it
I
was
went and
a
saw
lot
it
of it
in
was
the.
dealing with the propaganda of militarization, though. But that was kind of like the thing here. And I agree, Queen. The movie was terrible. However, they did a good job of explaining Cato.
Yes.
They did a good job explaining Cato, but they did a bad job as far as getting shoot, what's his face up to speed to be a good Brit. He played too much of a goofball throughout that whole entire movie, and then you get to like the last 30 minutes of it, it
And
finally clicks. That it's like, oh, I gotta start taking this stuff seriously. This is what my dad wanted me to do. And
I
he finally realized what Cato was trying to get him to learn. You know, that whole movie was a waste of time into like the last 30 minutes.
I didn't see it in the theater, and I'm glad I didn't. Because to me, it was just like because of that approach to it,
Mhm.
you know. And I grew up with the Green Hornet. I grew up with those characters, watching them on TV, reading comic books and stuff. And so to me, it just kind of felt like a slap in the face.
Which Total
Michael
Recall movie?
Ironside wasn't the villain of Total Recall because the villain of Total Recall was the guy who was running Recall. But he was the lead henchman. He wasn't the
Okay,
actual
now I know
antagonist.
you're
He was
talking
the
about
lead
the
henchman,
Arnold Schwarzenegger
the
one.
Arnold Schwarzenegger one. He's the one that's constantly going after Schwarzenegger. And he's the henchman. He's not calling the shots. I didn't consider him the villain per se because he's not the one actually
He
calling
was
the
called
shots. He was a
he was
henchman.
calling the shots while they was on Earth.
Well, he was leading the team that was sent after him, but he still wasn't calling the shots.
No,
He was taking his
he wasn't the
orders.
big bad. He was the
Yeah,
big bad.
he was calling the shots, but he was taking orders from somebody. So
Hmm.
he was a henchman, but he wasn't the big bad. What is wrong with you? Why are you barking? You're not supposed to disturb me right now. Shut up.
Yeah, the insects were more likable than any of the human characters. Yeah, especially in Starship Troopers. Exactly. Never really liked Starship Troopers. And
My
it's like, yeah.
sons and I watched the CGI Roughneck animated, and we all loved that. We would sit and watch it together. I love the Roughneck show. So did my boys when they were boys.
Mhm.
They're My youngest turns 35 this month, so I'm that old.
Well, I wouldn't say it was an excuse to hop on the superhero bandwagon. If you really look at continuity for what it's worth, Green Hornet was the more modernization of somebody else's mantle. And a lot of people keep forgetting that Britt was a direct descendant of the Lone Ranger.
Oh, okay. I
So it was pretty much
forgot
the
about
passing
that.
of the mantle of the Lone Ranger to Britt, who eventually became the Green Hornet, and it was supposed to be kind of set up the exact same way. You know, he had the older blood brother. Instead of having a Tonto, he had Cato. Their missions were really supposed to be taken more seriously, but because of the actual studio that did it,
When the studio doesn't respect
right?
the IP, you fall into trouble. And that is, we see that a lot with superhero movies when the producer, the studio, whatever, doesn't respect the IP, and it's like, oh, well, this book is making money, we'll just do a movie version of it. And it's like, yeah, but when you do a movie version of it and then start hollowing out things because you want to bump up this character that really shouldn't be bumped up, but you want to sleep with the actress, or the actor, or you never really liked the lead character and you want to make it all about the supporting cast, and it's like, but that's not how the book is.
Yep.
You
That
know,
that is
so
that is true here. Yes.
it
Now
did have
that's the thing here.
the remake.
I love
I didn't go for the remake. I really did not go for the remake.
I like the remake a little bit more as far as the storytelling was concerned versus what Arnold Schwarzenegger version did was to me was a great story, great action story. Colin Farrell version was a deeper story as far as why they had to wipe his memory. And that to me was like, oh, this is the deeper story, but I think it's going to be lost on a lot of people, just like the remake of RoboCop. The
I
remake of Robo, oh my goodness! Don't get me started on the remake of
I didn't
RoboCop
even
because
bother.
they changed a lot of stuff. They changed a lot of stuff in the remake of RoboCop to make a point about modernization of things as opposed to keeping the character the way it was supposed to be. And it's like, wow, you did certain things that kind of depowered RoboCop, but at the same time, you're trying to make a statement about the reliance on technology. And
Before I
it's just like, I don't know because it doesn't hit the same way. You know, the way OCP was not in the same vein. It was just it was different stories, but it still had the same talking about humanity versus technology. It still had that same flavor from the older version, but man, they depowered this RoboCop so much.
one
It's just
thing
ridiculous.
I'm happy that has never been remade, as far as I know of. ABC cast Karen Black and Joe. You know what I'm about to mention? Trilogy of Terror.
Yeah, they haven't
That
remade that yet.
last segment. If and I'm this is my last spooky season response, and I'm doing this because in the modern Celtic calendar, Samhain, which is their end of the Celtic year, beginning of their next year. It used to be the 31st of October to the 1st of November. Certain areas around Ireland, they have extended it. So spooky season can go as long as the 14th, 17th of November. So, in honor of that, get on YouTube, look up Karen Black Trilogy of Terror. You will not be disappointed. And no, you can't let your children watch it. And you only have to watch the third act. Oh, I just come on in, mother.
Yep,
You just,
yep.
that
So yeah, Lone
chef's
Ranger.
kiss.
Yep, Lone Ranger. I knew that they were both radio serials. I knew that. Both shows had the same writer, Gus, eventually the Lord, the same characters. Yeah, that's the sad thing. Yeah, the Colin Farrell version does exist. However, the reason why they did what they did to his memory, if you watch it to the very end, they went a lot deeper into what actually happened on Mars.
Oh, okay. Because
It,
my
and
understanding, according to the Schwarzenegger, was he was supposed to infiltrate that group, kind of got radicalized, and they needed to wipe him because he knew too much and could prove
well,
dangerous. Instead of killing him outright, they just wiped his memory and plunked him down in a construction job and just kept an eye on him to make sure that the memory wipe held.
that's because he figured out the alien technology to make the atmosphere breathable.
Yeah, and they didn't want and my only question about all of that from that version is like, if you were really that concerned about him spilling the beans, you could have easily engineered an accident,
Mm-hmm.
and that would have been that. But then we wouldn't have had a movie. So
we would have had the F you Bitty moment.
you can tie me up. Yeah.
We would have had those moments here. But in the
Yeah.
Colin Farrell version, they were up here saying a little bit more is that when they first colonized Mars, they actually met Martians, and he knew a lot more about what the Martians, because of the interaction with the Martians, he knew a lot more than what the company wanted out there.
Another reason they could have just killed them, but then you
They
wouldn't
should
have
have gone ahead and killed him and all this other stuff. So he pretty much, the Martians pretty much gave him almost like a blueprint of how to make the whole planet work.
Yeah.
Without relying on the corporate greediness of taxing all the people and everything.
for the air.
Right. Well, not just the air, everything that was on the planet. It's like he had the means to understand how to use all the resources on that planet, from minerals to liquids and everything.
Okay,
He
like
was
I said,
entrusted
I
with all of
didn't.
that. He was
I
Colin Farrell version was he was entrusted with all of that.
Oh, okay. Like I said,
So that's why everybody didn't like it, because it really got more into that. It wasn't as action filmy as the Arnold Schwarzenegger version, and that's the only reason why I even care for it, because it had a little bit deeper of a story. Because if it was exactly the same, I would hate it. But because it went deeper, I was like, oh, this was a deeper conspiracy, and now I understand why you kind of did more convert stuff instead of just overt action stuff.
But also Schwarzenegger at that time was more of a physical actor,
Mhm.
and he got to have enough say on the movies that he did to say, okay, it's a great storyline, but I think he wasn't trusting himself enough as an actor to be able to pull off that part. Whereas later on in life, where he plays the sheriff at the end of a zombie plague, who who now has to make the decision because it turns out his daughter is infected, and he has to make the decision between the safety of this town and this daughter he loves, and how far do you let things go before you have to make it was an interesting choice of story, because it's not his usual big action dude. This actually it's something I doubt if he could have done it 30 years ago. This is a part he played now because older he
Mhm.
could do it, but at that stage when he was doing those movies, he couldn't have played that part. He didn't have enough of the life experiences to be able to feel comfortable enough in playing that part and the choices that it required of him.
That is correct, except in the newer
Yes.
version. The newer version, I would not say that he was a cyborg,
I don't
because
think I watched the
in the
newer
newer
version.
version, and this is why I say they depowered RoboCop. When Murphy first gets the robotic body and everything in the original RoboCop, he pretty much controlled what he did.
Yeah,
He had certain directives that he had to oblige to, but it was still him controlling the body.
yeah, he still had a sense of agency of who he
In
was.
the remake, he has agency until the visor goes down. And this is why I hated the newer RoboCop as far as him being depowered. As they was testing him for combat readiness, to go back out there to serve as a cop, they were saying that his reaction time was too slow. He wasn't keeping up with all of this other stuff. His mind was not truly suited for X, Y, and Z. So they kind of made it where it was a failsafe in his body. Once his visor go down, this one program takes over. He thinks he's doing all this stuff, but it's an actual program that was running.
Oh, okay. Kind of like what they've done with Alien Earth.
Right.
The kids that they
But
use in Alien Earth, and
at the very end, we get the full cyborg version of the cyborg, the beginning of the cyborg version of him, because he was able to overwrite those controls
well,
with the
same thing
visor
in
down.
Alien Earth. Towards the end of season 1,
Mhm.
the kids have changed from who they were at the beginning, and also because they, and they kind of explained it kind of in an adjunct some way that they didn't use adults for this. They wanted kids because they wanted that sort of they were more malleable
Right.
for what Cavalier was planning. Um, but he didn't, and I don't think he expected things to end the way that season ended. Where the kids are like, "Oh, we're not. You know what? We're not afraid of you, and we're not afraid of those creatures. You need to be afraid of us, though." you know,
And
it,
that what usually happens here. But that's what I just some of the things about the lore between the remake and the original. Like the Ed 209s were never used for police purposes. They was used for military. They were sent overseas for war. So that's why I said even OCP has changed in the remake.
oh, okay.
We got to see we saw the Ed 209s, and they did not look like the Ed 209s that we grew up with the original RoboCop. They changed the design of it. They made it more military, and they actually replaced soldiers on the battlefield.
Oh, okay. That
So that's
okay.
why I'm saying they really changed the story about what OCP was about and the whole man versus technology type thing
So a lot of
aspect
the
of it.
humor that was also in it, especially um, a lot of the situational humor. I'm going back to the original
Well,
RoboCop. There was some interesting situational humor that was in there, intentional or not. That it sounds like, because I didn't watch the RoboCop remake. It's like, you know what, my brain says it wants to stick with the old stuff. I'm going to stick with the old stuff on this one.
some of the situational humor was done by Samuel L. Jackson because they made it more political, and he had this political broadcast talking about where OCP was going, and he was playing devil's advocate
Okay.
on a lot of the topics and everything. And then when OCP found out about how Murphy died and everything, and that they was ready to move into the more urban market to create the next RoboCop, they did. They used Murphy and all this other stuff, and even towards the tail end, the comments that was made at the tail end by Samuel L. Jackson, it kind of made you think for a minute because it was like harsh truth.
Ah,
Was
okay.
it a role that I would cast Samuel L. Jackson in again? No, no. I felt that he was wasted in this movie,
There
but
was
he did serve some levity because he was playing double advocate throughout the whole entire movie, being the so-called military political correspondent for this one network.
okay. I am heading to bed.
Yes, it is
It is
almost it's after 2 hours.
9:19. I
Yep.
have not had dinner. Luckily, I had a bowl of cereal for lunch.
Okay, I'm going to quickly go through these here. I won't expand on any real topics. So, yep, that was correct about the cyborg. The demonic
Yeah,
voodoo doll that was standout. Yep,
hello. I
yeah, love
love
terror.
that.
Trilogy of terror. Yep, or the whole thing that could have been a dream. Yep. This movie took place in a universe where sudden
Sudden
decompression
decompression
doesn't
doesn't
kill you.
kill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true. I don't think I have seen that one. Yeah, I have it on DVD, and it's like I'm a big old school RoboCop fan, except for RoboCop 3. RoboCop 3, it makes me cringe. And I watched it with my mother because she had never seen it. I have. I saw it in theaters.
Oh my goodness.
And when you try to change lore in the middle of the franchise, a lot of things go wrong, and a lot of things went wrong with RoboCop 3, mainly because OCP got bought out by another company, and a lot of things went awry. They had the sudden Gestapo movement to force people out of Detroit before they could build what they called New Detroit and all this other stuff. They was almost at the point to go ahead and decommission Murphy because they felt like he was being too human, and they wanted him to be more robotic and unfeeling. They want him to just follow orders and not protect his fellow officers.
Have no emotions, no critical thinking.
Yeah, it was just a lot of stuff, and then they introduced ninjas to the franchise, like him, cyborg ninjas.
You see this look on my face.
Yeah. So RoboCop 3 with RoboCop 1 and 2, I would do that. Even though RoboCop 2 had its problems, it's still chef kiss. When you get to RoboCop 3, it's just like, okay, it's a popcorn movie. It was just a good waste of 2 hours. I just leave it at that.
I'm going through Underworld again, and going through the films and going, okay, this is where the films are solid, and this is where they kind of fall. You know, the first 4 are solid in the point of it's all connected in the lore, and the lore is strong. But by the time you get to Blood Wars, they kind of lose it. You know, they kind of screwed the pooch on Blood Wars. But it let us see Celine's her journey. Stop. I have the sound turned off. I've got it on do not disturb, and this phone will not stop barking at me. But if I throw it out the window, you know, people will say I done.
Yes, Lewis dying was very, very sad.
Yeah, that's just
even worse. The doctor who maintained his psyche, when she passed in RoboCop 3, we almost didn't have Murphy. Murphy was about to go off the deep end.
Dang.
But you know, we don't really talk about that type of stuff in the original RoboCop franchise because of the simple fact of how they changed the lore going into 3. It was different to have Lewis die. It was different because that, you know, again, with all the loss that Murphy had dealt with, even with the loss of his own body, losing Lewis the way that he did, it was kind of like a hard thing to swallow. To have the people who you're supposed to work for murder the person who was looking after you, which was that doctor.
Yeah.
That's a lot tougher to take. It was a lot tougher to take here. Yeah. He stole that flight pack and integrated to his system, and he was able to fly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No. I will talk about, maybe not next week because Cliff will be back, and we want to cover Mightor. But
no, we covered Mightor. Mightor is done with.
Okay.
Next week. Give me 1 second here. I forgot what we were supposed to talk about. I forgot what we're supposed to talk about next week here. I could tell you here in one moment. Next week, I believe it's something that I chose here that I could probably talk a little bit more about. Next week is next week is Shazam. Shazam. Yep.
Okay. Well,
it's no. I forgot the name of the 2 kids, but the 2 racing together to spell the word Shazam. Poof! He pops up. What do you need, my little masters?
I will do a quick treatise on.
I know you've seen Shazam. So,
Yes, I've seen Shazam. I have seen that several times. But I was saying I will probably add my 2 cents on the underworld, and because I think it's great how they parallel in regards to the female version of the hero's journey,
mhm.
both Ginger Snaps and Underworld, and what both those movies have done for women in horror specifically. Um, I think it's, to me it's fascinating. If come back Queen next week and I will tell you why I think it's fascinating, or find me on Facebook and I'll explain it there. But yeah, I'm watching. I've gotten what I hit awakening today. So and then I still have Blood Wars to whack out. But I think it's fascinating because it considering what it did for Kate Beckinsale's career at that time.
Yeah, they do get confused often here. We're not talking about the Shaquille O'Neal movie. We're talking about the Hanna-Barbera giant genie cartoon here.
Well, the
The
Shaquille
genie, that genie
O'Neal.
that does not reside in a lamp, it resides in two halves of a ring.
Okay, but I thought, and I could be wrong, I thought the I didn't watch it, but I thought the Shaquille O'Neal movie was supposed to be a version based
Mm-mm.
on that. Okay, it wasn't. Okay,
No,
I thought it was supposed to be based in part on that original Hanna-Barbera IP.
no. The
But
Hanna-Barbera was called Shazam.
okay,
The Shaquille O'Neal was called Shazam.
okay,
The difference between M as a Mary and as a Nancy.
got it. Okay,
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know why my
Underworld is great. To me, Underworld was underrated. Underrated. The first two Underworld movies were underrated. The third one,
the third one was because they wanted to build on that lore, and Michael Sheen was it was a contract he could not get out of, even though his wife at the time, Kate Beckinsale, dumped him for the director of those movies. Um,
that is true, Queen. That. Well, you're talking about Captain Marvel, DC's Captain Marvel from Fawcett.
yeah, ABC used to have they when they had their hero series like Mighty Isis, they had their version of Shazam.
Right. Zachary Levi played Billy Babson,
Billy
aka Captain Marvel, which again they couldn't use the name Captain Marvel after Marvel won the rights to use Captain Marvel.
Marvel, yeah,
So
but
they changed Billy Batson's series from Captain Marvel to
to
Shazam, the
Shazam,
powers of Shazam,
yeah.
which was
Um,
the post, which is really not even the name of the wizard who gave him the powers. It's just the acronym of what powers he had.
That's right. That's right, because they went in the comics when Mary then got the powers. They used
She was
that
Mary
same,
Marvel,
yeah, and they used the same acronym, but it was female. It was the female version of those powers.
and then you had Captain Marvel Junior, which was the other character. I'm trying to think. Captain Marvel Junior eventually in the movie was Freddy in the movie. That's
Okay,
who Captain Marvel Jr. was. So the whole idea of Marvel Family was expanded in the movie because a lot of the people who became Marvels in the movie have not been talked about in the comics for decades.
until DC versus vampires.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so confusing. Yeah, it's confusing, but the history is there. I could talk about the history, but we don't have time tonight to talk about that.
No, because we are already 30 minutes over, and
Yeah.
I need food and sleep.
So on that note, go ahead and
And
do your
sign us
thing.
out. Thank you guys. Thank you, Queen. Thank you, Robot 9-606, for being here live. Thank you out there in TV land, whether you're watching us live or you're watching us later. We love you. We appreciate you. I'm Elaine. Come find me, lenscafeonline.com or at Elaine Haygood here at YouTube. Yeah, I do videos that have nothing to do with Joe, unless I'm messing with Joe about something, and then they have a lot to do with him. Anyway, y'all have a good one. I need food and sleep. Behave. Don't kill and eat nobody. Okay? Bye.
And that brings us to that this show is brought to you by Plasma Fire Graphics. If you need a cover for your brand new novel, your graphic novel, your comic book, or anything that's in the written form in some form or fashion, you want to hit up Jeffrey Hayes to have that cover done. Why? Because this award-winning graphic artist can do a lot of wonders to have great graphics that will bring people to your table. If you don't believe me, then believe this video.
You've worked hard and written a great book. Now it's time to give it a great cover. If you're an indie author or small press publisher, Plasma Fire Graphics is your source for affordable cover illustration and graphic design. Plasma Fire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you.
You seen what he done? He could do the exact same thing for you. So hit him up on plasmafiregraphics.com or his Facebook group for Plasma Fire Graphics. As far as I'm concerned, I will be back here Saturday. If he was here at the very beginning, I think I might end up doing that topic. I might not. I just don't know. It depends on what else I see over the week here as far as what is being talked out there as far as the collecting spirit is concerned here, or the creating spirit, depending on what's actually happening here. And let me go ahead here to finish up this here. Yes, there have been several Captain Marvels in the Marvel Universe. That's just in the Marvel Universe alone, as well as on the DC side as well. So, yep, I agree here. And no, thank you. Without you, we wouldn't even have a show. So, no, thank you more so than anything else. And we tried to build this channel from the ground up and try to make it where people like you have a voice in what we talk about, and we can have positive conversations about the things that we love here. And good night to you here, Queen. And good night, Robot. And thank you so much for subscribing here. Have a good night. And for everybody else who is watching on the replay, have a good night to you. As I always say, live life, grow, and be well. And unlike our founder, Brian K. Morris, I don't care if you wash your hands, but never, and I do mean never, apologize for being awesome. Stay awesome. And we see you here next week on Thursday for another episode of Comic Book Spectrum. Have a good evening. See you then.